And welcome to our webinar today. My name is Jake Friedwald, and I'm head of product marketing here at Fulcrum. Today, we're going to talk about owning your environmental data workflows, and it's a pretty heavy topic. So there's going to be a lot of discussion. I'm hoping that you'll give questions. We've left some time for questions at the end. Please feel free to put those into the GoToWebinar interface, and I'd be happy to answer them. If we don't get to all the questions that we have, then we'd be happy to answer them offline, as it were. So with all of that in mind, let's get started. I want to begin by just talking about the problem that we're facing with respect to environmental workflows. And frankly, this is not limited to the environmental services marketplace. It's something that's very common across anyone who is out there in the field. And that is that the field teams themselves are often struggling with tools that are supposed to make them more efficient, but they actually make them less efficient in certain ways and cause more frustration than help. So let's talk about what that looks like, why it looks like it, the context in which it happens, and so on. The context is the set of business processes that are done out in the field. And I talk about data collection on the one hand, and I talk about process management on the other. And they're really two very similar kinds of things. So if you look at inspections, for example, we're going to go through some details about stormwater and SWPPP. We're going to go into that in some detail. That inspection is always an act of data collection, right? So the whole purpose is to collect data. But there are a lot of cases in the field where you're doing more than just collecting data. You're involved in some other kind of process. It might be maintenance. It might be some other kind of other sort of field process. And very often safety is part of a process, or should be part of a process, but often is something that has to be done. You can think about any of the things you see here. You can think about confined space permitting and things of that sort. Those are not things we think about necessarily as data collection, but if we're doing remediation, we have to follow a process. And as we follow that process, we have to demonstrate that we followed that process correctly. We have to demonstrate that we've taken the correct safety precautions while we're following that process. So although it doesn't feel like a data collection process, the process of going step by step and providing evidence that you did the right thing is in fact a data collection process. So think about both of those things together today, both data collection and process management. The main challenge that I want to talk about today is the issue of where data is stored and where processes are managed for each one of the use cases that you're in. And I want you to consider every use case. We've got, 12 here on the screen. But I want you to think about it for every use case that you're engaged in. And let me break that down a little bit, because normally the problem with following any given process in the field with any use case is that you're dealing with this very complicated, technologically fragmented environment where there are a lot of different applications. The first step in any application might involve more than one app. It might involve people reverting to paper because they don't want to do the duplicate entry in multiple apps, so they do it on paper, et cetera. And after they've done the work in multiple apps or done the work on paper, then they move on to the next step, and the next step is harder, and the third step is harder. It all becomes very complicated and difficult. This is the source of a great deal of the frustration that we see with those field tools. So I want to drill down a little bit on what that actually looks like, because it's nice to talk about this in the abstract. You get the sense, okay, there's a lot of crossing lines, it's pretty nasty, but let's actually talk about what it looks like to do a couple of specific use cases. For example, an SWPPP. The purpose of that, of course, is just to perform checks on erosion controls, sediment traps, discharge points, et cetera, right? So this is kind of in that inspection bucket that we were talking about before. This is a pure data collection process. What data are we collecting? We know that for the ERP, there's going to be some information about managing who's going out, right? The schedules of the field personnel. So an inspector assignment might be something that the ERP needs to know. In which case the ERP would normally be, if you do what the ERP wants you to, they will normally have you use their mobile app. If your ERP is SAP, then you're going to use SAP Mobile Start or whatever, something built in Mobile Start, or one of their pre-built apps or whatever it may be. Regardless, it's an SAP product. And if you think about what an SAP product is, SAP is a very large company. It's an excellent company that's done great work for a lot of people, but it's focused on what happens in the office. It's the CEO's reference point. It's the C-suite's reference point, and it's very often focused completely on the office. The mobile apps to build that were built to support the field are therefore designed less for the people who are out there in the field, and they're designed more with the idea of the business person in the office saying, this is what I need from the field, right? So yes, we're going to collect data while we're doing the SWPPP inspection, but it's going to be maybe on an SAP app, but it's going to be with that SAP mindset in place to capture the information about it. I'll spend a little less time on each one, I promise. There's 3 more I'm going to go through. One of them is the GIS. Obviously, anything like this is very GIS heavy. You're going to have stormwater outfall locations, erosion areas that you've observed, all that kind of stuff. And very often that happens in one of 2 different mobile apps that Esri provides, Survey 123 or Field Maps. Survey 123 is more like a pure survey app. It's questions that you ask and the field worker answers. Field Maps is more like the GIS in the palm of your hand. You can do things like keep track of the locations of all of your people, or you can do route analysis and things like that. So there's somewhat different apps, and that's a reason why there's 2 of them. But you're probably going to use one of those 2 things to capture the information that goes back into Esri ArcGIS. Enterprise asset management. The biggest of these, of course, is IBM's Maximo, but there are plenty of others. You're going to talk about the data that you need to document the fact that you did silt fence repairs, for example, right? Well, all of that is going to go into Maximo Mobile, or there are third-party apps that do this kind of thing as well, built on top of Maximo. But the bottom line is Maximo is the system of record for all of the people who use Maximo Mobile or these other bolt-on apps. And then finally, SMS. No, I'm not talking texting. I'm talking safety management systems. There you've got things like incident reports. Hazardous, maybe you've got a slip hazard where you need to document the fact that there's a dangerous area because there was some erosion, and now a place that was not previously a slip hazard now is a slip hazard. How are you going to report that? Or how are you going to report that you yourself out in the field slipped and maybe had a minor injury or something like that? That's going to go into something like Velocity EHS. They have a mobile app. I don't know. They have actually, I think, 2 mobile apps. I don't know if they call it Velocity EHS Mobile, but it's powered by Velocity EHS kind of thing. Again, the point here is that the system of record when you go out there is the safety management system. So somebody is doing a stormwater pollution prevention plan could in fact be using all 4 of these to capture different pieces of information related to the inspection. And that's not all, because that's just the stuff that's distinct. There's also a lot of data that's common to all of these 4 systems, right? You can see them here. Locations are going to be important to a lot more than just GIS. You're going to need to coordinate across these different systems. So there's going to be some kind of unique key, a project ID or something like that probably, that's going to help coordinate the information across these systems. Dates are going to be important. Regulatory adherence is going to be important, yada, yada, yada. There's a bunch of stuff that not only goes into one of these apps, but might end up going into more than one of these apps, which means you're doing double data entry. So what are we dealing with? The result of this kind of environment is double data entry and multiple apps, or you could choose to build a custom app to capture this information and then integrate that custom app with other systems, these other systems, or you're going to, and this is very common, this is one of the most common reasons I've seen for among our customer base for why people have previously reverted to paper. They will get frustrated with the amount of data entry they need to do. They will write the stuff down on paper. They'll get waterproof paper or whatever if they have to. They'll take that paper back to their hotel room or to their office. They will type in the information from that paper into a spreadsheet, and then the spreadsheet gets uploaded and the integration process happens from there. So one of these 3 things is the typical environment that we see when people call up Fulcrum and say, hey, I got to do something about this. All right, this was pure inspection. I just want to anchor the point that a process is also an active data collection. Let's talk about something that's like air sparging and soil vapor extraction, right? So we've got an environment where there is VOCs there are VOCs in the ground. There's been an oil spill or something, who knows what, and you're trying to pump pressurized air into the ground to help make that biodegrade faster, et cetera, et cetera. If you already know what it is, then you know better than me, and if you don't, then that's as far as you need to know anyway. The bottom line is there's a lot of equipment out there in order to do air sparging. You've got to be able, you're pushing air into the ground. So you got to do things like clean the filters from those air sparges. You got to check the pressure and make sure there's sufficient pressure to push air into the ground. You need to make sure that you're doing the job that you, the job you're doing is effective. So you're going to collect samples to make sure that the soil is actually being remediated correctly. So there's that kind of work is going to be going on. Cleaning a filter is not data collection. Checking pressure is a form of data collection, but it's not, it's something you're doing as part of a maintenance process, not because you're just doing inspections, right? I'll start with the common data, and again, it's very similar, right? What are the locations, IDs for the various components that you've got are going to be important in different places. The operational status is going to be important to pretty much everybody, and the dates are going to be important to pretty much everybody. So all of that stuff is common, and you're going to use these same individual mobile apps to capture some of the information for each of the applications we're talking about. So here's your ERP with cost tracking for the repairs that you're making, the GIS apps for things like locations and well placements and stuff like that. Test results related to the particular location is going to be really important. For Maximo, you're going to be pulling in the maintenance logs. This is actually, I should pause for a second and note that we're not just talking about collecting data here either. You want the maintenance logs of the components that you're looking at, so you understand what you're looking at before you do a repair, before you do maintenance. You want those that brought down. So I really should be talking more about not just pushing information out to, collecting data from those different platforms. We're also talking about getting information from those platforms in a way that's consumable to the field worker and makes their jobs easier, better, more productive, more gratifying, all that kind of good stuff. So it's a two-way street. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but keep that in mind. And anyway, on top of that, of course, there's going to be things like, well, were you exposed to VOCs? Are there other things that you need to keep track of that you had not been able to keep track of before? If you're going into a confined space permitting is actually a pretty complicated thing to do. There is a confined space permitting app currently available on the Fulcrum app gallery, in part because people found it such an important part of their safety processes that they needed some way to keep track of that. So you're still getting information from and pushing information back to all of these different platforms. And that causes, I'm not going to go through these one by one. You see it, double data entry, multiple apps, custom built app, write it on paper, transcribe it. I've just gone through 2 of the 12 use cases that I showed you on the slide. And there are many more use cases than that many companies have to deal with. So this is the level of frustration that we're dealing with. Let's talk about what that frustration does to you and your business for a few minutes. This next is a little bit of a text-heavy slide, and I apologize. I was trying to organize it differently, but I think you'll get the point as I go through it. One of the major issues that I've seen over and over again with our customers prior to using Fulcrum, of course, is that they had engineers doing that clerical work. So you had an engineer who was capturing the data out in the field, and they were the ones who were actually typing it in, transcribing it into a spreadsheet, and that is a really lousy use of a really costly resource. An environmental engineer is, relatively speaking, an expensive resource that should not be spent doing clerical work. And on top of that, they hate it. They would much rather be out in the field doing what they need to do than looking at typos as they go from paper to a spreadsheet. So engineers doing clerical work is a significant problem. Data quality issues become extremely common in this kind of environment. First of all, because you've got multiple apps and you might type the wrong things in those multiple apps. You might type the right thing in one and make a typo in the other, and now those 2 things are disconnected. You have a really poor audit trail, because as you say, okay, well, what did you do in this process? You're doing your, ISO 14001 review. What did you do in this process? Well, how do you show them? I put this into this app, and then I put that into that app, and then I put this in the other app, and then I copied some stuff down into a spreadsheet for uploading into the SMS later on. How do you show that? It's incredibly complicated to do. Latency is another major issue that people see when they're dealing with these kinds of systems, because collecting all that data, whether it's a field process or a real data collection process, collecting all that data, getting into one place, doing the data quality checks that are necessary, and so on, means that they're often taking weeks before they get any kind of report. And if you've got weeks getting your reports out, then if you are a firm that's doing this for money, then you're talking sorry, weeks to months before you're actually getting paid. So latency is a major issue. And then finally, safety in this environment is almost completely an orphan. Safety done correctly should be safety checks being put into, integrated with every step along any kind of field process that you're doing. You got to do a lockout and tag up before you do an examination of a piece of equipment that you are maintaining, right? That kind of thing. All of these different individual checks should be just part of your process. But because they're on their own, in their own either paper-based checklist, as we see all too often, or hopefully in some app that actually ensures that the right things are being done, because they're off in their own little world, they are not attached to or driven into or integrated with the processes that are out there in the field. So these are all major problems related to those fragmented systems. And it's important to ask yourself as you're talking about justifying a purchase of another kind of system, or trying to justify to IT the fact that you want to re-architect the way that you work in the field, any of those things, you need to ask yourself things like, how much does that latency cost you? What's the cost of float? If you're waiting months to get paid because the data isn't out there quickly enough, how much does that cost me as an organization? How much do the engineers cost me? Not just the engineers that are wasting their time doing clerical work, but also if morale is lower, you're going to have higher turnover, which means you have to hire and you have to train replacements more often. How much does that cost you? How much are you struggling with the compliance requirements that you have? I mentioned before, maybe you're working on your ISO 14001 compliance. Great. Or maybe you've actually got a violation or a potential violation, an accident, and you need to be able to say, here's what happened. Well, how much do you struggle making that stuff come together in a way that is comprehensive and auditable and correct? How much do all of these issues, and I'll put this generally, degrade your organizational performance? I'm sure there are things that I have not said that you're thinking to yourself right now, yeah, if we could fix this problem, it would make a huge difference. And this problem is related to that complex environment that we've been talking about. And then finally, just how much are these issues holding you back? Not only are they degrading what you're doing right now, but they may be holding you back from doing things that could be effective for your future. And let me make a specific point about that, because that's very abstract, holding me back. Well, how am I being held back by the fact that I've got this fragmented environment? I'd like to talk about AI for a second. I know AI, like I'm getting sick of AI, and my company does AI on a regular basis. But if AI is going to be applied to fieldwork, and it's going to be applied strategically, how can you do that if you don't own the processes and the data that you use? Because AI feeds on those processes and that data. And I gave you a picture a few minutes ago of fragmented systems, each of which have their bolt-on apps. That's true. But there's also, I was talking to a company a little bit ago where they said, yes, we have an enterprise asset management system, an EAM platform that we use for everything except water. We acquired a company that uses this for water. It's really good for water. We see no reason to change it. We're keeping it. So even with just the one app, they've actually got multiple apps. And not only is there the one app, there's also the data warehouse. There's also the spreadsheet that's under Jenny's desk somewhere. There's also all these other different kinds of resources that we know we rely on around the office, around the environment, out in the field, in the warehouse. We rely on all of those different information sources. And that means that any opportunity in this kind of fragmented environment to apply AI is going to be different kinds of AI from different vendors applied in different ways at different points. It's going to be 100% one-off solutions. So you'll see your EAM vendor, Maximo, IBM. IBM has an AI strategy, and you will see in your EAM, you will see AI being applied. But will it be applied to the entire process that you've got going on in the field? Probably not. What I'd like to do, again, because even this is a little bit more abstract, what I'd like to do is make this more concrete, more real to you by sharing a video that's going to be much better than anything I can say. There's no marketing speak. I won't say no. There's a little tiny bit of marketing speak, but I stripped most of that stuff out. And it's about 2 minutes long, and it shows you the day in the life of a field worker who has AI that is applied to their entire environment, their entire set of processes and data. So this is what that looks like. For about 2 minutes, you'll see the day in the life.
Take a look with me at what the future holds when our field worker puts on his smart glasses with camera and microphone and gets started with his guided AI experience in Fulcrum. I've already guided him to the right pipe. We're here. Okay to snap a picture of the pipe.
Go ahead.
Riprap intact, vegetation sparse, no headwall present.
Yep, log all that.
I can guide the process too. What's the pipe made of?
Looks like ductile iron pipe.
Got it. Next, confirm the diameter and protrusion length.
Diameter 19 inches. Protrusion 31 inches from the slope.
Got that. I'm here to guide the job to completion.
All right, let's go.
Hang on. We're supposed to document the outfall on this inspection too.
Right, this pipe is discharging into a county-owned reservoir. Is that yes or no for outfall?
By definition, that's no. Based on location and GIS data, I agree with your assessment.
Okay, mark it, but alert the supervisor to double check.
Sites assessed, status log, nothing missed. Next inspection, culvert 2281B, 0.6 miles due east. Here are your driving directions.
Roger that.
So I just want to make it clear that what you saw there was someone using smart glasses, and the smart glasses have a camera and a microphone built in to be able to have that kind of interaction. That is not, what I just showed you is not something that is live today. I'm not here to say that Fulcrum can do that today. In fact, the technology is not available to allow anyone in the market to make exactly what that is today. But that is, for us, a North Star. It is the vision. It is the way that we are adapting AI to fit the needs of the field worker. There's stuff that I didn't even show you there. Things like sanity checks. If he says, okay, well, it looks like it's 21 inches and that's way too short. The AI analyzing the picture can look at it and say, you know what, that doesn't look right. And he's, are you sure? And they can say, oh yeah, I measured in centimeters. Okay, that's fine. I'll do the conversion for you, right? So she's capturing the information. She's doing sanity checks. You're telling me it's 32 degrees outside, but it's June and you're in Texas. Oh, I'm sorry, I was using Celsius or whatever. All of these kinds of things can be applied to the field and field-based processes, but only if the field-based processes have the data and the process in a place that's accessible to an AI that can manage that and understand that and then turn that around and provide that to the field, right? Provide that guidance to the field. So I've talked a lot about where the problems are. I'd like to talk about where we need to move to, and that is to have a field platform. And I just want to talk about why this should be incredibly obvious to a lot of people, even though it very often isn't. If you look at all those blue boxes that we had before, those blue boxes were owned by a business unit owner, right? The enterprise asset management team. And that platform was a place where they could standardize their processes and data, customize their processes and data where necessary, and integrate with other platforms. And every business unit that we talked about here has one of those things, and the field doesn't. So it's time for the field to get a platform for its own. What it will do, if you can get a field platform that is able to manage its own processes and data, is first of all, it will help the field own its own processes. So when you're moving from California to Oklahoma and the regulations are different, you can adapt to those regulations quickly and without getting IT involved in anything except integration processes or whatever. You can own your own processes. You can own the safety, you can own the process of putting safety checks into your own field processes, that sort of thing. You can own that yourself. It's going to simplify the workflow management by ensuring that you are able to say, this is the complete process. I understand every step in the process. You can talk to your experienced workers, and your experienced workers can look at it and say, yep, that's what we do. And that means that you don't have this kind of complex jumble of different kinds of tasks and different kinds of systems. It's just easier, cognitively to understand what it is you need to do, and then you're able to implement that in a more simplified and streamlined way. All of the field-related data is in one place because it's coming from one process that's in the field platform. And it ensures that you got that focus for field communication. You know, I mentioned a moment ago that the platforms that are owned by other groups are there to help standardize, customize, and integrate. That integration step is really important. It's really about communication. And if you have a field platform, you can say, okay, you need to communicate with me. To give me stuff, I'm going to get it using my platform. And to send you stuff, you can either request it from my platform, you know, can set things up that way, or I will ship it to you from my platform. That ability to have really a nexus of field communication is really critical. And it's critical in a lot of ways. It's going to help to eliminate double entry. It'll help you automate your reporting. The compliance requirements that you have are reinforced because they're there in the process. Compliance requirements, whether they are for environmental concerns or whether they are for safety concerns or anything else. The data that you capture is going to be captured by all personnel and not just GIS pros. And I think this is a really important consideration. When you do a lockout tagout on a piece of equipment, let's say it's a piece of mobile equipment, right? It's a portable generator. When you do a lockout tagout on that mobile portable generator, normally nobody has any information about the where it is part of it. You might have an address or something, but you don't have an automatically geo-stamped location. It was at this latitude and longitude, which means GIS pros aren't going to get everything that they could without having, they aren't going to get that safety data. They're not going to get all the data they could. And by the way, if I do a safety check on that generator and I get a lat long on it, that can also be pushed back to the enterprise asset management platform. So I can say, oh yeah, I know where that generator is. It's over there. And I do that not just because there was a maintenance check on it, but because I was doing a safety check to begin with. So it's just a much richer capability to capture GIS data, regardless of whether you are a maintenance worker, an inspector, a GIS pro, or a non-GIS pro. You're still going to be able to capture that kind of data. By the way, lines and polygons and all that kind of stuff can be done by ordinary people. The audit trail that you need is going to be established and maintained because it's all in one place. Everything you did is all in one place. And that, of course, supports your ISO 14001 goals. You know, getting the objective evidence. You've seen these documents before, right? Operational control, monitoring, measurement, et cetera. You're going to be able to get all of those goals supported because the data is in one place. So that leads me to Fulcrum. Our reason for being is to be that field first platform. We've built a platform that is designed with the field in mind first. It's not owned by an office team that says, okay, here's what I want from the field. It's built by a team that manages our operations, our software solution based on input from field teams and people who manage those field teams. And we have a laser focus on doing things like boosting productivity in various ways. I just showed some ways, you know, that video showed a way that AI can help boost productivity, streamlining operations in various ways. Like, that's all we do. And we do it all for the field. The mindset is just completely different from almost any other company you'll meet. So instead of having this complex siloed environment with the fragmentation that we were talking about, we get a single field platform where every step that you take is contained inside Fulcrum. Now, the data that you need in order to do your job may come from a lot of different places. We're going to pull base maps from the GIS. We're going to pull asset data from the EAM. We're going to get, you know, safety requirements from, or safety documentation, or whatever it might be, from the safety management system. All the data that you need will come from those systems, but it comes into Fulcrum, which is where you get it. So when you need an audit trail, you say, this is the information I have. This is what I had at the time that I did it. And now I'm going to do step one. And step one is completely under control of the field platform. The data gets captured correctly. The process steps get, occur one by one, the sub-process steps. And then when you're done with step one, you move on to step 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. And all of that happens in a really rigorous, consistent, auditable way. It's going to give you much higher data quality. That's going to have your throughput and efficiency much better. And then when it's all said and done, all of the applications that wanted that data from you are still going to get that data from you. They're still going to get information. The GIS is still going to be able to get updates from Fulcrum. The asset management platform can still have information pushed back to it, and so on and so forth. That's what Fulcrum is all about. So this single field platform, I like to break it down into really 4 major things that you can think about us doing. The first one is that field data collection, right? We want to make it easy for the field to do, right? These are typically not people who are highly technical in this specific way. They are not programmers. Very often we've seen a lot of places where there are retirees who are doing the data collection, and the retirees are quite reasonably a bit tech shy. They've seen a lot of people come in and try to do things, and when they try to do them, they've actually made it more complicated or worse for the field worker. This is designed to make that retiree feel as comfortable with the app as with the clipboard. It's designed to make them make doing the right thing easier than doing the wrong thing. And then it's also designed to make sure that the support staff have an easy time of it too. They can see the data. They can update the apps that are taking place. You want to add a video walkabout of a scene to get a better safety check so the supervisor can look at it and make sure that you're seeing the same thing they're seeing. Absolutely, just plunk it in there. You don't have to go back to IT. You don't have to go back to the Maximo administrator. You don't have to go back to anybody. The support staff can just add that into the app and be done with it. In fact, they can do it while people are standing out in the field. Right? We've had this happen before where people are standing out in the field. They say, hey, we forgot this one thing. Call back to the office. Jenny, can you add this one thing to the app? Jenny adds it to the app, hits save. The person out in the field hits sync, and boom, it's in the app. That kind of ease of use is critically important to make sure that field data collection occurs. Workflow management is really important, being able to make sure that what happens in the field is managed by the field. Some of that's related to what I just talked about with respect to being able to update those apps, but there are also other situations in which being able to do something technical. You want to fire off an integration to Slack so that somebody else, everybody sees a Slack when a certain task gets done, or when there's a certain hazard that gets identified. The field can manage that kind of workflow on their own if they want to do that. That's very often an integration job or the stringing together of multiple apps. The data integration process is really important here. And again, I want to go back to that two-way street, empowering field teams with data that they can get from these other platforms, and then sharing that field data out to those other platforms in real time if there's a connection, or asynchronously if there is no field connection and you're out in the field. But being able to get that information for teams and sharing that data with other people is really important. The more you share your data, the more valuable it becomes. The more people use that data, the more they want it. I got to say, that's one incredibly powerful aspect of this when it comes to budgeting. Very often people are able to budget more effectively and ask for more budget by saying, look, the data that we're providing is higher quality and in more real time, and therefore more people are able to use it than ever before. Look at how much more I could do if you gave me just a little bit extra money. So that sharing of field data is really critical. And then finally, field-driven AI innovation, really focusing on what it is that the field needs, not what IBM is going to offer its office teams, so that you can provide AI to the field in very practical field-focused ways. We've already implemented some capabilities there. There are some capabilities that are on our roadmap that are really exciting. As I showed you earlier, our vision is to have that fully AI-guided experience for the field worker, where they don't even have to have a clipboard anymore. They're just talking through, taking pictures, taking video, all through smart glasses. Will we get there? I don't know. Will the industry as a whole get there? I don't know. But knowing that the capability, whatever it is that we're going to do that's going to make us more productive in the future, that starts with this single field platform. So being able to handle, you can also put this category as being able to handle the unknown unknowns for the future, if you wanted to think of it that way. So that's all the pre-planned slides I've got for you at the moment. I'd like to have a conversation with you now. I've left plenty of time, as you can see here, for questions. So I'd love to have that conversation with you now. If you are not, and please put those into the go to webinar interface. If you do not, if you're not currently using Fulcrum, then we can talk about whether or not you should use Fulcrum. If you want to talk about where you are and what kinds of things a field platform can do for you in the abstract without it being Fulcrum specific, I'm happy to talk about that too. I want to highlight the number of customers that we've had conversations with that have turned into real benefits to their companies, whether they started with a platform that was really not for the field and moved to Fulcrum, or they started with homegrown systems and moved to Fulcrum because those homegrown systems were too hard to maintain, or whether they had what we like to call bolt-ons, right? Those are the mobile apps that are attached to those enterprise apps, or whether they use spreadsheets. I talked about that, where they're doing data capture. Actually, what I talked about was writing stuff on pen and paper, which a lot of people do as well. But there are other people, of course, who bring a laptop out to the field and type stuff into spreadsheets and do it that way. So we've had many, many of these conversations, and I'd be very happy to have a conversation with you now as well. With that, I'm going to open up the question box and see if we've got anything out there. I'll try to anyway. All right. Okay, I've got some questions here. Sorry, I'm just still getting used to the new interface. One of the questions here is it's funny for a number of reasons, and I may as well tackle it head on. Can you replace the GIS? It's a big nut. If you are a company that would benefit from using Esri ArcGIS, we are never replacing Esri ArcGIS. We are not a GIS platform. We are a field data collection and process management platform. So there are some companies that use us without Esri ArcGIS. Those are typically extremely small companies where they really are, a team of a couple of people, 5-10 people who are, everything they do is in Fulcrum, and everything they need to know about location is something Fulcrum can provide. They're not doing things like network analysis, where they're looking at water pipes or flood systems, or they're not doing geospatial analysis of floodplains or any of that kind of stuff. If you want geospatial information and you want to do that kind of analytical work, you want to create the kind of maps that need to be created, all that kind of stuff, then you need to have something like Esri ArcGIS, and that is the 800-pound gorilla in the market. They are a great partner of ours that we've been working with for a number of years now, and I would highly recommend you go that way, rather than thinking about Fulcrum as a replacement for the GIS. If you already have ArcGIS specifically, then one of the things that you might use one of the things you might do is you consider using Fulcrum for your GIS enablement, right? So doing data collection is something that you can integrate easily with ArcGIS in pretty straightforward ways, and it would be better for you to use. It would be great for you to use Fulcrum along with your GIS, but it's not a replacement. All right. Next, if I purchase the Fulcrum product, hang on again, I'm having trouble seeing this. All right, I'm having issues with this a little bit. The question is, if you purchase the Fulcrum product, do the smart glasses come with the product, and how do you coordinate replacement and maintenance of the glasses? Is there a warranty? All that kind of good stuff. The video that I showed you is not current technology, right? So we are working towards that. We've actually been in conversation with multiple vendors about this kind of capability and how this kind of capability can play out. The ability to do what I showed is not available from anyone on the market yet. When we do have that capability, the odds are pretty high that we will not be selling Fulcrum with the smart glasses. That'll probably be something where we are still a software vendor. We are at heart a software vendor, always have been a software vendor, but I'm never going to rule out things for the future. It may be something that we would bundle, or who knows what. So we're still talking about something that is a ways down the line, but we're not yet at the smart glasses phase of this. And actually, there's another question from another person that says, how far along that visionary path to AI are you? So I should address that too. You saw a lot of things in that video. One of them was using the voice to capture data, structured data, instead of just putting it into comments, right? So we've had voice to text for a long time, where you can speak into your phone and it'll create a text for you. You can speak into your phone and it will add something to a comments field in a form of some sort. What we have not had in the industry is the ability to speak a bunch of things and have Fulcrum or any platform pull out the specific parts that go here. So I say, I've got there's actually a video of this online, which I can share with you if anybody's interested, where I can say, the surface area is, a half an acre, The permeability is 90%. That's probably a wrong value, but whatever. It's rimmed with a swale. The swale is filled with vegetation, mostly shrubs. Like, you can say those things, and Fulcrum will pick out the parts and put it into the right places in the app. So you saw that in the video where he just says, it's 19 inches this way and it's 31 inches that way. And Fulcrum in that case puts it into the app. That exists now in something we call audio fast fill. So that capability is being used by field teams right now. There are use cases where it's amazing and is extremely helpful. There are use cases where it's less helpful. We want to talk about whether or not that's useful to you. The best thing about that feature, the thing that I love most about it, is it's just there automatically. It's not like you have to design the app to say, okay, well, now I'm going to capture what the person says and I'm going to apply AI in exactly this way. No, you just click the button at the bottom of the screen because this time you want to talk. And when you talk, it captures that information. So that's audio fast fill. We've got something very similar called photo fast fill, which we expect to have out within the next probably 4 months or so. It's being trialed right now, but these things are very complicated. So they take a lot of testing to make sure they're rigorous enough for that field workflow. But that capability is going to be able to do things like take a picture of a nameplate, a faceplate, and be able to capture all the bits of information on that faceplate and plug it into the places in the app where you need to capture that data. It'll also be able to it'll do more than that, but let's just start there. We are currently also have some customers trying out something we're calling Fulcrum Insights. It's very early stages right now, and you did not see this in the video, but it's something like where you could ask Fulcrum, how many people on my team are done with their work for the day, right? So it would be able to go in, see how many records were filled out, how many records were assigned, be able to come back and say, oh, well, it looks like the following 6 people are 80% complete with their workload, and the rest of the people are less than 50% or whatever it is. And you can do other analysis of records. There's a bunch of stuff we could talk about there, but that, like I said, that's very early stages. If you're a current Fulcrum customer with and you want to get, dig into this at kind of the alpha level, then please talk to us. The other things are happening later, things like the sanity checks and stuff like that. That's something that's we're working on right now as far as working it into the plan, but we don't have those in the plan yet. Pardon me, we don't have those in the product yet. So yeah, there's a long way to go, and frankly, there's a long way for the industry to go. One of the things people ask us regularly, I may as well talk about that now too. What about offline? Are you going to be able to do all this stuff offline? And the answer is currently we do not do that offline because we use an LLM to do the audio fast fill work that we do. But small language models are getting better and better, and those may make that possible to do online. So as the technology changes, we may see changes that enable us to move faster and have more capability than we had to. One thing that's just been hard to keep pace with as a product marketing guy over the past couple of years is just how fast things have changed. Jennifer, yes, I'll send that to you. Thank you for attending. Somebody said we're a small company and don't have all these systems. That's fine. If you are a small company, I talked about this when I was talking about GIS. If you're a small company and don't have all these systems, then using Fulcrum as your core platform for the field still makes sense if that's the kind of environment you're in. I have someone asking about GIS and data quality. Let me phrase this correctly, and I got to get rid of some of these other things that are in the way here as well. It looks like this is going to give us worse GIS data quality. Instead of sending experts into the field using the right tools, we're going to get junk from people who aren't trained. I understand the criticism. I understand where you're coming from. When you send people out into the field and they don't know GIS, it's reasonable to worry about whether or not they're going to send you back things that don't make sense. That's one of the reasons that whenever you're collecting data that's non-GIS, that is GIS related from a non-GIS savvy person, that you have a buffer between them and the GIS. I know the GIS is your system of record if you're in the GIS team, but the field team system of record holds what it captured, and you don't have to let that stuff in without having some kind of buffer between you and them. Here's what I will say. When you have the field team out there and they're taking a picture of some hazard, getting the point of that hazard automatically captured through their phone or mobile device is going to be as good as anything you would get through a similar device with a GIS team member. So we're not talking about getting sub-centimeter level quality here, of course, but we are talking about getting data that is more regular because they're doing it more often, and it's more and it's of no lower quality when it's automatically captured than what you would be getting through other devices or a GIS savvy person who has another similar kind of device. I would also say that when you give people in the field the opportunity to create a line or a polygon based on where they're standing or what they're seeing on the map, they understand the business problem, if you will, that they're dealing with. They might be, if they're an environmental engineer, they understand the kind of contour that they need to create in order to capture the scope of the issue they're looking at. And so generally speaking, that person is going to give you pretty good GIS capabilities and pretty high quality GIS data. So I definitely would recommend having a buffer. Don't just accept stuff into your GIS as if we were, the field system record is not your field system record. I get that, but you are going to get more data, and that data should be reasonably high quality data, and it's going to be often better than the nothing you would get if they were out there using paper, or if you were, didn't have enough GIS savvy people to send out using the GIS tools. So is there a trade-off? Yes. Don't immediately denigrate it as, we're going to get junk, because it's just, we've seen it over and over again. It's just not true. Thank you for your question. Levi says, I'm interested in the maintenance log aspect that was talked about in the beginning. Is this possible to pull in right now? For another example, let's say I'm looking at a silt fence that was previously damaged and was repaired. How can I pull the date it was repaired? The answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Not just because I'm a marketing guys always say yes, but because you really do that. We have a lot of companies that are that have integrated their data in some way with Fulcrum to make sure that information coming from some other platform is part of the field system of record. There are multiple ways to do that. I've done entire webinars on how we do integration, but I can rattle off a couple if this is the kind of thing you wanted to know. And tell me if it's not what you want to know. If you want to dig technically, great, I'm going to do that. If you don't want to dig technically, give me more background to what you're asking. But for example, we can accept webhooks. So we can, if you want to push data out to it, we can do that. If you want to make a call and response using a web service, we can do that. If you want to do a pull, let's say you've got a set of fences that you're looking at tomorrow, and you want to get that information from your other system of record, your other platform, you can do an extraction from that platform into a CSV or something else and upload it. And by the way, it doesn't just have to be CSV. A lot of the geospatial data that's there, if it's from ArcGIS, for example, especially, then you could, geodatabase or whatever format you want to use is fine there. Speaking of ArcGIS, like I said, we've been partnering with them and using their facilities for a long time. So it's very common for us to use a feature service layer inside Fulcrum. So you've got your base map, which is Esri based, and then you got your feature service layer on top of that shows you the individual elements about the data that you're pulling in, and you can look at things that way. So, and in that case, it stays in the feature service layer. It's part of the feature service layer. It's not part of the Fulcrum app. But if you wanted to have it pull into the Fulcrum app, there's a number of ways you can do there too. We have a really robust API, actually. I'd be remiss not to mention that. The API is really robust and really well documented. So if there's specific ways that you want to integrate with some other system, and one of the things you want to get is that data, then absolutely you can pull that date. When you're done, if you want to push that date back out to the system, then as long as that system is open enough to enable you to do that, then you can push it back out saying, okay, it was updated today or whenever that record was synced from Fulcrum. So yeah, the short answer is yes. The long answer is, yeah, there's a lot of ways, and we should talk about what your use case is and understand that more effectively so we can tell you what it would look like in your specific situation. I think it's only been 20 minutes, but I think I've worked through all of the questions that people have here. If there is anyone out there who, sorry, I'm going to delete some of this chaff so I don't get lost again. If there's anybody out there who has not seen their question answered, then please chime in. Otherwise, I will say in the modern parlance, I'm happy to give you 10 minutes of your life back. Thank you all very much for your time today. Looks like that's it. Thank you all very much for your time today. I know you had other things you could be doing, and you chose to spend it with us to hear about this. We're very grateful for that, and we would love to talk to you more. So please do chime in, talk to us, talk to me, go to our website, whatever it is you need to do to get a hold of us. But thank you very much for your time today, and we wish you the best of luck in implementing your fieldwork.